It was a warm evening in May 1976, and Muhammad Ali was on top of the world. 3 months earlier, he had reclaimed his heavyweight title from Leon Spinks, cementing his status as the most recognizable athlete on earth. But tonight, at Romano's restaurant in Louisville, Kentucky, he wasn't the greatest. He was just a husband trying to give his wife a perfect evening. What happened next would last only 5 seconds, but those 5 seconds would demonstrate that Muhammad Ali's greatest victory wasn't won in a boxing ring. It was won at a dinner table with nothing but his words, his character, and a single 100 bill that would transform a man's life forever. This is the incredible true story of how Muhammad Ali turned his wife's racist humiliation into one of the most powerful lessons about grace, dignity, and human redemption ever witnessed in public. If stories about choosing compassion over conflict inspire you, subscribe for more incredible moments that prove true champions are defined not by how hard they hit, but by how much grace they show under pressure. Muhammad Ali had specifically chosen Romano's because he wanted to give Veronica the perfect anniversary dinner. They had been married for just over a year, and despite his global fame and the constant demands on his time, Ali made it a priority to create these intimate moments together. He understood that their interracial marriage in 1970s America came with unique challenges, and he wanted Veronica to feel celebrated and protected wherever they went. Romano's was Louisville's most exclusive restaurant, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over white tablecloths, fresh flowers on every table, and a reputation for impeccable service. The maitre d' had seated them at the best table in the house. Other staff members had been respectful and professional, and the evening was unfolding exactly as Ali had hoped. Veronica looked stunning in a navy blue dress that complemented her natural beauty. Ali, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, couldn't take his eyes off her as they talked about their plans for the future, their dreams of starting a family, and Ali's upcoming fights. "You know what I love most about evenings like this?" Ali said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "What's that?" Veronica smiled, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight. "For once, I'm not Muhammad Ali the boxer, I'm just Muhammad, your husband." They had already enjoyed their appetizers and were waiting for their main courses when their waiter approached their table. Derek was a thin man in his 30s who had been serving them throughout the evening. He had been polite enough during the initial interactions, though Ali had noticed a certain stiffness in his demeanor that seemed to go beyond normal professional reserve. As Derek approached to refill their water glasses, he accidentally bumped into Veronica's chair. Instead of apologizing immediately, he hesitated for a moment, looking down at her with an expression that Ali caught immediately. A mixture of disdain and something darker. "Excuse me," Veronica said politely, thinking the man simply hadn't noticed the bump. Derek straightened up, and in a voice just loud enough for nearby tables to hear, said, "Maybe if you weren't taking up so much space, accidents wouldn't happen." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Several nearby diners turned to look, their conversation stopping mid-sentence. Veronica's face flushed with embarrassment and hurt. Ali felt his jaw tighten, but he remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the waiter with laser intensity. But Derek wasn't finished. Emboldened by what he apparently mistook for submission from the famous couple, he added with unmistakable venom, "Some people need to learn their place, even in establishments like this." The racist undertone wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer. This wasn't just rudeness or poor service. This was a deliberate attempt to humiliate Veronica because of her race, despite the fact that she was there as the wife of the most famous athlete in the world. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were staring now, some in shock, others with the uncomfortable fascination people have when witnessing a public confrontation. Veronica's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass, trying to maintain her composure despite the public humiliation. What happened next took exactly 5 seconds, but those 5 seconds would be remembered by everyone in that restaurant for the rest of their lives. Ali slowly stood up from his chair. He didn't jump up angrily or make any sudden movements that might escalate the situation. He simply rose to his full height of 6'3", with the fluid grace of the athlete who had danced around every heavyweight challenger of his generation. Derek, suddenly realizing he might have made a catastrophic mistake, took a small step backward. The confidence he had shown moments before began to evaporate as he found himself looking up at one of the most physically imposing men in the world. But Ali didn't raise his voice. He didn't clench his fists. He didn't do any of the things Derek might have expected from a man whose wife had just been publicly humiliated. Instead, Ali looked the waiter directly in the eyes and spoke in a voice that was quiet, but carried to every corner of the restaurant. "San, my wife is the most beautiful, intelligent, and graceful woman in this room. Any man would be honored just to be in her presence. The fact that she's here with me makes me the luckiest man alive." He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued with devastating gentleness. "But you just showed everyone in this restaurant exactly who you really are. And that's the saddest thing I've ever seen." Then Ali did something that no one in the restaurant expected, something that would haunt Derek for the rest of his life in the most beautiful way possible. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a crisp, the 100 bill. Equivalent to about 500 in today's money. He placed it gently on the table next to Derek's trembling hand. "This is for you," Ali said softly, his voice filled with genuine compassion. "Because I can see that you're a man who's never experienced the kind of love and respect that I share with my wife. Maybe someday you'll understand what you're missing." Derek stared at the money, then at Ali, then at Veronica, who was watching the entire exchange with tears in her eyes, not from hurt anymore, but from overwhelming pride in her husband's response. The waiter's hands began to shake visibly. The entire restaurant had gone silent, every person straining to hear and see what was happening. Derek had expected anger, confrontation, perhaps even violence. What he received instead was something far more powerful, compassion mixed with absolute moral authority. Derek began, but his voice cracked. He looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware that dozens of people had witnessed not just his cruelty, but also Ali's response to it. The contrast was devastating, his small-minded hatred exposed next to Ali's towering grace. Ali gently placed his hand on Derek's shoulder. "What's your name, son?" "Derek," the waiter whispered, his voice barely audible. "Derek, I want you to know something. The way you treated my wife tonight tells me that someone, somewhere in your life, taught you to see people as less than human. That's not your fault. We all inherit things from the people who raised us. But what you do from this moment forward, that is your choice." Derek's eyes filled with tears. The hardness that had been there moments before had completely disappeared, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. The racist confidence had crumbled, leaving behind a broken man who was finally seeing himself clearly. "I'm sorry," he said, first to Ali, then turning to Veronica. "Ma'am, I am so deeply sorry. There's no excuse for what I said, none at all." The manager had appeared at their table, alerted by other staff members about the commotion. He began to apologize profusely to Ali and Veronica while starting to escort Derek away, clearly intending to fire him on the spot. But Ali held up his hand. "Wait," he said to the manager. "Don't fire him." Everyone looked at Ali in surprise, including Derek, whose tear-filled eyes showed disbelief that the man he had just humiliated was now protecting his job. "This man just learned something important tonight," Ali explained to the manager and the watching crowd. "He learned that hate hurts the person carrying it more than anyone else. And he learned what it looks like to receive grace when you don't deserve it. Those are valuable lessons. I think he'll be a better man because of them." The manager looked uncertain, but Ali's moral authority in that moment was absolute. "Give him another chance," Ali said. "But make sure he understands that respect for every guest isn't just policy, it's basic human decency." Derek nodded vigorously, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "I understand, sir. I truly understand." As word of the incident spread through the restaurant and then beyond, something remarkable happened. It wasn't the initial disrespect that people talked about. It was Ali's response. Local newspapers picked up the story within days, focusing not on the racism, but on how the heavyweight champion had turned a moment of ugliness into a profound teaching moment. Derek kept his job, but more importantly, he kept the lesson. Other restaurant staff members who witnessed the exchange later said that Derek became one of the most courteous and respectful servers they had ever worked with. He would often tell new employees about, "The night Muhammad Ali taught me how to be a better person." The 100 bill that Ali had given him became more than money. It became a symbol of transformation. Derek never spent it. He had it framed and hung it in his apartment as a daily reminder of the evening that changed his perspective on life. Below the bill, he wrote a simple inscription: "The night I learned what grace looks like." But Derek's transformation went far deeper than improved customer service. Inspired by Ali's example of responding to hatred with love, he began volunteering at a local community center, working with disadvantaged youth. He often shared the story of his encounter with Ali, using it to teach young people about the power of choosing compassion over retaliation. The ripple effects continued for years. When Derek's son was born in 1982, he named the boy Muhammad in honor of the man who had saved him from a life of bitterness and prejudice. "I wanted my son to be named after someone who showed me what it means to be truly strong," Derek would later explain. The other diners in Romano's that night became informal ambassadors for the story, sharing it with friends and family across Louisville and beyond. Many said it changed how they thought about responding to conflict and treating people who might be different from themselves. For Veronica, the incident revealed something profound about her husband that went beyond his boxing prowess. "Anyone can be great when everything is going well," she later explained in interviews. "But Muhammad showed me who he really was when someone tried to tear us down. That's when I knew I had married not just a champion, but a truly great man." Ali's response that evening reflected the deeper spiritual journey he had been on since converting to Islam in the 1960s. His faith had taught him that true victory comes not from defeating enemies, but from transforming them into friends. When someone treats you badly, Ali would later explain to reporters, you have two choices. You can respond with the same energy they gave you, which just creates more darkness in the world. Or you can respond with light and maybe, just maybe, help them find their way to something better. This philosophy would guide Ali throughout the rest of his career and life, whether dealing with hostile journalists, racist critics, or even opponents in the ring. He consistently chose to respond with dignity and grace, rather than matching negativity with negativity. The story took on additional poignancy when viewed in the context of the challenges Ali and Veronica faced as an interracial couple in 1970s America. Despite Ali's global fame and success, they still encountered prejudice and discrimination. But rather than allowing these experiences to make them bitter, they chose to use them as opportunities to model a better way of being in the world. Romano's restaurant eventually placed a small plaque at the table where the incident occurred. The inscription read, "On this spot, May 15, 1976, Muhammad Ali demonstrated that the greatest victory is turning an enemy into a friend." Derek worked at Romano's for 15 more years before opening his own small cafe. The walls were covered with pictures of Muhammad Ali, and Derek never charged veterans or struggling families full price for their meals. "I learned about service from the best," he would tell customers who asked about the photos. The story spread internationally, reaching countries where Ali was beloved as a symbol of strength and principle. In Africa, where Ali was considered a hero for his stance against the Vietnam War and his advocacy for civil rights, the restaurant's story reinforced his reputation as a leader who practiced what he preached about human dignity. Decades later, the story continues to resonate in an era when social conflicts often escalate quickly into public confrontations. Leadership experts and conflict resolution specialists study Ali's approach as a masterclass in de-escalation and transformation through grace. The genius of Ali's response was that he addressed both the immediate harm done to his wife and the deeper problem of the prejudice that caused it. By responding with dignity rather than anger, he denied Derek the satisfaction of dragging him down to a lower level while simultaneously offering the waiter a path to something higher. Today, Derek is in his 70s and still lives in Louisville. He still tells the story to anyone who will listen, and his eyes still fill with tears when he reaches the part about Ali placing that 100 bill on the table. "Muhammad Ali saved my life that night," Derek says. "Not from any physical danger, but from the hatred that was eating me alive from the inside. He showed me that there was a better way to live, a better way to treat people, a better way to be human." What Muhammad Ali demonstrated in Romano's restaurant wasn't just conflict resolution, it was transformation. In 5 seconds, he took a situation that could have escalated into ugliness and turned it into an opportunity for growth, understanding, and redemption. The waiter who told Ali's wife to learn her place thought he was dealing with just another celebrity couple he could intimidate. Instead, he encountered a living example of what it means to turn enemies into friends, darkness into light, and hatred into understanding. And in those 5 seconds that made Derek cry and changed his life forever, Muhammad Ali proved that sometimes the strongest response is also the most gentle, and that true champions are defined not by how hard they can hit, but by how much grace they can show under pressure. The story has become a teaching tool used by educators, religious leaders, and community organizers around the world. Teachers use it to discuss conflict resolution with students, exploring how Ali's approach could be applied to bullying, prejudice, and interpersonal conflicts. Churches have incorporated the story into sermons about forgiveness and redemption, with Ali's act of placing that 100 bill becoming a powerful metaphor for blessing those who curse you. The restaurant incident occurred during a crucial period in civil rights history, when the legal victories of the 1960s were still being translated into social reality. Ali's response provided a model for confronting prejudice without perpetuating the cycle of hate, choosing education and compassion over intimidation and fear. In our current era, when public confrontations often go viral for all the wrong reasons, the story of Muhammad Ali and Derek the waiter reminds us that our response to hostility says more about us than the original hostility itself. The 5 seconds that changed Derek's life continue to inspire people to choose grace over retaliation, understanding over revenge, and transformation over destruction. It remains one of the most powerful examples of how a single moment of moral courage can create ripples of positive change that last for generations. Muhammad Ali's greatest knockout didn't happen in a boxing ring. It happened at a dinner table in Louisville, where he knocked out hatred with love and transformed an enemy into a lifelong friend with nothing more than his words, his dignity, and 100 bill that became priceless.